They say not all wounds are on the body. Some are carved deep into the soul, and those wounds shape us forever. This is my story. The story of a girl who watched her entire world turn upside down when the person she trusted most betrayed her, and when the man who should have protected her became the very one who stole everything. I grew up believing I was special, not because I was rich or different, but because of my grandfather. He was the kind of man whose presence filled every room. Strong, wise, gentle in his guidance, but firm when he taught me lessons about life. My father had died when I was young, and my mother remarried when I was barely old enough to understand what that meant. That's how my stepdad came into the picture. But for me, there was only one man who held the place of a true father, my grandfather. Grandpa built an empire with his bare hands. From a tiny workshop, he grew a company that became one of the most respected businesses in the country. And through all of it, he said to me, "One day, this will be yours. Not because you're my granddaughter, but because I know you have the fire in your heart." Those words burned into my soul. I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to carry his name forward. When I was 15, I started spending summers at the company. While other teenagers were chasing parties, I was chasing ledgers, learning how numbers moved, how decisions shaped futures. The board members chuckled at first, calling me the little intern. But Grandpa's eyes told them to take me seriously. I watched, I listened, and slowly I began to understand the responsibility that would one day be mine. But shadows have a way of creeping into the brightest rooms. My stepdad had always been there, smiling too wide, speaking too smoothly. He was charming to strangers, but to me, he was a man who lingered too long in places he didn't belong. He wasn't cruel in obvious ways, but there was always something cold in his gaze when he looked at me, like he resented my very existence. When I turned 21, Grandpa's health began to fail. The man who once strolled like a lion now leaned heavily on his cane. Yet in his weakness, he was strong. On his final birthday, he called me into his study, placed his weathered hand on mine, and said, "The company is yours. Don't let anyone take it from you. Promise me." My throat tightened, and through tears, I whispered, "I promise, Grandpa." A week later, he was gone. The day of his funeral, as I stood beside his grave, I felt like a piece of my soul had been buried with him. But I also felt something else, a fire, a duty, a weight pressing down on me, the responsibility of carrying forward his legacy. What I didn't know was that the man standing behind me that day, my stepdad, was already plotting to rip it from my hands. The company's board gathered weeks later to announce the official transfer of ownership. The will was clear. My grandfather had left everything to me: his house, his shares, his fortune, all of it. For a moment, I felt untouchable. I was young, yes, but I was armed with determination and his faith in me. But greed is a poison, and it was already flowing through my stepdad's veins. He pretended to be supportive at first, telling me, "Of course, sweetheart, it's what your grandfather wanted. I'll be here to guide you." I wanted to believe him, even though my gut whispered otherwise. Slowly, he began inserting himself into the company. At first, it was small things, sitting in on meetings, giving suggestions. Then it was larger, signing contracts on my behalf, making decisions without me. The board members, many of whom had been swayed by his charisma and manipulation, began to see him as the authority figure. And then one day, I walked into a meeting and found my name erased. My shares, my position, my rights transferred. My stepdad sat at the head of the table, smiling like a king on his throne. I remember standing there frozen. "What is this?" I demanded. He leaned back, smirking. "Business, my dear. You're too young, too inexperienced. The company needs a strong hand, not a sentimental girl clinging to her grandfather's shadow." The room spun around me. "You stole it," I whispered. "Stole?" he laughed. "No, I saved it, and one day you'll thank me." But I didn't thank him. I walked out of that room with rage boiling in my veins. My mother? She stood by his side, silent, refusing to look me in the eye. That betrayal cut deeper than any knife. For months, I felt like a ghost. My friends didn't understand, my mother wouldn't listen, and everywhere I turned, my stepdad's influence grew stronger. He threw parties in the house that once belonged to my grandfather, spending money like water, surrounding himself with people who worshipped him for his wealth. The company that had been built on integrity and hard work was turning into a playground for his ego. But here's the thing about arrogance. It blinds men to their own weakness. I spent those months in silence, but not in defeat. I studied harder than ever, not just business, but law. I dug into the details of the transfer, every contract, every signature. I found cracks, tiny, almost invisible flaws. And while he was busy flaunting his stolen crown, I was sharpening my sword. The fatal mistake came when he grew too greedy. He signed a deal with a foreign investor that was riddled with corruption, cutting corners, bribing officials. On paper, it looked like profit. In reality, it was fraud. And that's when I struck. I gathered evidence, every scrap of paper, every recording, every witness. I built a case so tight it could choke. Then I walked back into that boardroom, the same one where he had humiliated me, and I laid it all out. "You didn't just steal from me," I said, my voice steady. "You stole from the company, from every employee, from the legacy my grandfather built. And now the law will take it back." His face turned white. For the first time, the mask slipped. The board members, once charmed, now turned on him. The evidence was undeniable. Within weeks, he was facing charges. His empire of lies crumbled like sand in the tide. And me? I reclaimed what was mine. Not just the company, but my identity. I wasn't the little girl in the corner anymore. I was the heir my grandfather had always believed in. That night, I sat alone in Grandpa's study, holding his old cane in my hands. I whispered, "I kept my promise, Grandpa." And in the silence, I swear I felt his presence, proud and at peace. But here's what I want you to know. Life will test you. Sometimes the people closest to you will betray you. Sometimes the ones who should protect you will be the ones who hurt you the most. But that doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do with that pain. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you. I chose to let it build me. And if you've ever been betrayed, overlooked, or pushed aside, remember this. Your story isn't over. Sometimes the ones who tried to bury you forget that you're a seed. So rise, fight, and never, ever let anyone steal your destiny. If this story touched you, share it in the comments. Tell me, have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted? Your story might inspire someone else to keep fighting. And don't forget to subscribe, because more stories like this, stories of pain, power, and triumph, are waiting to be told.